hands on the arms of my chair, ready to go. No. Suddenly her eyes were locked onto mine. Detective Cross, do you realize how much good could come from a story like this? This human monster is responsible for hundreds of deaths, maybe more. I know, I said, working hard to keep my voice in check. One of them was a friend of mine. And one was my brother, said Adan. So you can see why I want to write this story. Her words resonated in the small room. She wasn't angry, just measured, and within that, passionate. Miss Tansey, please, call me Adan. Everyone does. Adan, you obviously care a great deal about this, but I don't know you. I wish I could trust you, but I can't. Her stare told me I hadn't lost her yet. But I hope you'll help me anyway. I'm Alex, by the way. Everyone calls me that. She thought about what I had said, and I could see she was conflicted. It was unusual to see this in a journalist, at least the ones I knew back in Washington, this kind of transparency. Finally, she stood. "All right," she said. "I'll see what I can do for you. I'm in." She picked up her pen again, a silver-topped onyx roller, the kind people give as gifts. "Where can I reach you, Alex?" "At the Redeemed Church of Christ's Men's Shelter. That's where I live now." I don't know if she noticed my pause. Whether or not it was wise, I found that I wanted to impress Adan Tansey. "I'll call you," I said. "First thing tomorrow, I promise." She nodded, and then she smiled. "I believe you, Detective Cross. So far, anyway. Don't disappoint me, please." How could I even think of it, Adan? Chapter 76.
A businessman with rumored connections named Mohammed Shoal stood like an expensively framed portrait of himself in the open double doors of his enormous home. The main building was 20,000 square feet, and the guest house was another 8,000. He was among South Darfur's wealthiest men and never missed an opportunity to show it off. The gated compound, with its high walls and attached citrus greenhouse, made its own statement. Who but the devil lives like a king in the middle of hell? Not that the tiger minded dealing with devils. He did it all the time. This was his business, and if he had carried a card, a black devil might have been the logo. Shoal smiled broadly as he shook hands to elbows with the large and quite handsome fixer and murderer. "Welcome, my friend. Your team will wait out here, of course." "Of course. They will be fed. They are always hungry." The tiger left Rocket in charge of the others and knew he would maintain discipline. The boys waited by the front gate, across the yard from Shoal's two plainclothes guards, who watched the younger ones with unconcealed amusement. The guards at the estate had come up from the streets themselves. "Let them be cocky and sure of themselves," the tiger thought, as he eyed the older watchdogs. Underestimation had always worked in his favor. He followed Mohammed Shoal through the estimable front hallway and across an interior courtyard. Cooking smells, cardamom and beef, came from one side of the house. Boys' voices came from the other, reciting in Arabic, which further defined Shoal's politics. They came to a glass door at the far end of the courtyard. An enclosed grove of exotic fruit trees showed on the other side. Shoal stopped. "We'll meet in here. Can I offer you tea? Or perhaps grapefruit juice?" The latter was a boast, since such juice was a delicacy here. "Nothing," the tiger said. "Only what I came for. Then I will be gone." Shoal dismissed his houseboy with a quick flick of the wrist, then used a key from his jalabia pocket to let them inside. It was pleasant in the greenhouse, temperature-controlled with a waft of humidity lacing the air. The tiled floor was shaded under a low canopy of green. Above was the geometric pattern of a glass and steel ceiling. Shoal gestured for the tiger to enter a small dining area in the back. 4 rattan chairs surrounded a luminescent bywood table. Shoal moved aside a potted sapling. Then he ran the combination on a floor safe hidden behind the tree. Inside the safe was a paper envelope, stuffed thick. Shoal took it out and placed it on the table between them. "I think you'll find it's all there." Once the tiger had checked the contents, he set the package on the floor and sat back. Shoal smiled. "You've done much here," the tiger said, gesturing around the room. "It's impressive." Shoal smiled, puffed up by the compliment. "I've been blessed many times." "Not just blessed. You've been busy. You are clever, I can tell." "It's true. Between the legislature and my businesses, there's little time for other things." "Travel," the tiger said. "Meetings day and night? And your family, of course." Shoal nodded, clearly enjoying that the subject was him. Yes, on most days." "Saying things you shouldn't? Putting your loved ones at risk?" The nodding stopped. Shoal seemed to forget that he was afraid of looking the tiger in the eye, and did it now. "No," he said. "Truly, I've not talked about my business dealings with you or anyone else." "Yes," said the tiger, without moving. "Truly, you have. You know a reporter? A woman? A Dan Tanzi?" He reached up with one finger and tipped open his collar an inch. He spoke into a microphone. "Rock the house. Now rock it. Spare no one. Make an example of them."
Chapter 77.
A few seconds later, the entire greenhouse reverberated with a half-dozen or more gun blasts coming from outside, and then bursts of machine gun clatter. Mohammed Shoal tried to get up, but the tiger was fast and agile and already had his hands around the man's throat and was choking him. He slammed Shoal into the far wall, and a spiderweb pattern blossomed in the glass. "Do you hear that?" the tiger shouted at the top of his voice. "You hear it? All your fault." There was more gunfire, then screams. Women first, followed quickly by boys, their voices high and pitiful. "That," the tiger told him, "is the sound of your mistakes, your greed, your stupidity." Shoal grappled with both hands at the tiger's huge and unmovable wrists. His eyes reddened, and veins appeared ready to burst at his temples. The tiger watched, fascinated. It was possible, he'd learned, to bring a man to the edge of death, and then keep him there for as long as he liked. He liked this because he despised Shoal and his kind. The greenhouse door shattered as 2 bodyguards arrived to rescue their employer. "Come in!" shouted the tiger. In one motion, he spun Mohammed Shoal around and pulled a pistol from the paddle holster at his ankle. He charged forward, Shoal in front as a shield, firing as he came. One bodyguard went down with a 9mm hole in the throat. The other sent a bullet through his employer's outstretched hand, then into his shoulder. Shoal screamed, even as the tiger launched him the last several feet across the floor, where he crashed into the guard. Both men went down. Then the tiger shot the second bodyguard in the face. "Olga!" Rocket said as he appeared in the empty doorway. Olga meant chief in Lagos street parlance. The tiger liked the designation, and it came naturally to his young soldiers. The screaming had all but stopped in the house, but there were still sounds of breakage and gunfire as his boys let off the last of their venom and steam. "There was a tutor? Children being taught?" "Taken care of," said Rocket. "Good." The tiger watched as Shoal struggled to stand. He fired once into his leg. "You'll need a tourniquet or you'll die," he said to the businessman. Then he turned to Rocket. "Tie Mr. Shoal up, then put this in his mouth, or up his ass if you like." This was an M67, a grenade. "Put a pin before you leave."
Chapter 78. Everything continued to feel unreal and fantasy-like to me. All the doors at the church shelter for men were locked after 9 o'clock. No one could get in or out. With traffic being what it is in Lagos, I barely made it back there in time. My cot was at the far end of one of 3 lodges, long, high-ceilinged dorms off the main corridor, where breakfast would be served in the morning. Alex Cross, I thought, what have you come to? What have you done this time? The guy in the next bed was the same guy as the night before, a Jamaican man by the name of Oscar. He didn't talk much, but the strained look in his eyes and half-healed track marks told his story. He lay on his side and watched me while I rooted around for a toothbrush.
"Yeah, man. There's some shoddy man of God looking your way. He there now."
Father Bombato was standing at the door. When I saw him, he beckoned with a finger, then walked back out of the dormitory. I followed him outside and into a hall packed with last-minute arrivals. I pushed upstream toward the front doors until I caught up with the priest. "Father?" I saw then that he was dialing a cell phone and wondered who he was calling. Was it good news or bad that I was supposed to hear?
"Miss Tanze wishes to speak with you."
He handed over the phone to me. Adan had news. An assassination in South Darfur had occurred that day. One of the representatives to the Sudanese Council of States was dead, and his family had been slaughtered. "Any connection to Basel Abdoud in D.C.?" I asked her. "I don't know yet, but I can tell you that the Tiger does frequent business in Sudan." "Weapons? Heroin?" I asked her. "What kind of business, Adan?" "Boys. His loyal soldiers. He recruits in the Darfur refugee camps." I took a breath. "You might have told me about this earlier." "I'll make it up to you. I can have us on an air freighter to Niala first thing in the morning." I blinked. "You said us?" "I did. Or you can fly commercial to Al Fasher and see about ground transport from there. I leave it to you." Any other time I never would have considered it. But then I'd never been 5,000 miles from home without a lead and sleeping in a men's homeless shelter before. I put my hand over the phone. "Father, can I trust this woman? With my life?"
"Yes, she is a good person. And I told you, she is my cousin. Tall and beautiful, just like me. You can trust her, detective."
I was back on the line. "Nothing goes into print until we both say so? Do we have a deal on that?" "Agreed. I'll meet you at the Akeja cantonment, at the main entrance by 5. And Alex, you should prepare yourself emotionally. Darfur is truly a horrible place." "I've seen a few horrors," I said. "More than a few." "Perhaps you have. But not like this. Nothing like this. Believe me, Alex." Part 3. Camp. Chapter 79. So far, Adan's connections were very good, and I was impressed by how quickly and efficiently she got things done. It took her only one brief conversation on the tarmac, and then one radio call, before the African Union sergeant in charge allowed us to board the C-130 freighter the following morning. We were in the air by 6, the only civilian passengers on a plane carrying millet, sorghum, and cooking oil to Darfur. The murder investigation continued, and now it was airborne and seemed to have more purpose than ever. I borrowed a situation map from one of the flight crew and saw that Darfur was about the size of Texas. If I was going to get anywhere, I had to run with a few assumptions. One, that the Tiger had been in Niala at the time of the massacre of the Scholl family, and two, that Adan's information was correct, and he might still be culling boys from camps for displaced persons in the area. Given all of that, how far would he have gotten in the past 18 hours? That was the next question that had to be answered. During the flight, Adan patiently told me much about Darfur and Sudan, and though she spoke in a low-key manner, there was no disguising the horrors, especially against women and children, thousands of whom were raped, then branded to increase their humiliation. Rape has become